And I think that was the thing that caught me off guard a little bit, was that, really sink or swim practical side of it. And I think definitely something that did help me was, as I mentioned, working while studying. I would advocate for that 100%. Doing the sales and, learning to work with targets or deliverables.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the She Just Got Going podcast, a podcast about entrepreneurship and career advice. And I am particularly excited to be covering a career advice episode today and just speaking about this lovely lady's journey. So we have Monique Munday on the podcast, and she pretty much studied marketing management and is now in the field of marketing research. So we are just going to talk about her whole journey and that career, and also navigating being married, moving the country, and all sorts of exciting stuff. So Monique, can you please just introduce yourself and pretty much tell people a little bit about your background and what you're involved with at the moment?
Awesome. Thanks, Ella. It's so cool to be chatting with you today. Such a privilege for me. I've been, watching some of your podcasts, and I'm just so inspired by it. So really awesome. So I'm actually a Pretoria girl, born and bred in Pretoria, and stayed in Cape Town for a little while. And then I moved to Dubai. So I currently find myself in the heat of the desert. But loving it. Yes, I studied marketing management, like you said, and did my honors and masters in marketing. And I worked from the start of my career, pretty much worked in market research, which is, quite interesting how the Lord works, because I never thought that even existed as a career. When you study marketing management, it's quite a broad field to study, which is actually great, because you can really go into a whole bunch of different careers based on that foundation. For my first career, I actually had a choice between digital marketing and market research. It kind of just popped up for me, and I wasn't too sure which one to go for, and it was so glad I ended up going into market research. I've been working about 5 years in the industry.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I agree 100%. I as we were talking a little bit before we started recording, I know that growing up in schools really tried their best to have people come and talk to you about different careers and, give you an idea of what you can expect when you go into certain careers. And marketing just never seemed to be one of those careers that featured. But I think we're living in a day and age where it is such a necessary department in so many companies. And so why, we're not really being more informed about a career in this field was beyond me. And that's why, I'm so glad to actually have you on the podcast today to talk about it. And so, I guess let's dive right into it of how did you actually decide going to university that you were going to study marketing?
So actually, I was going to study law. So my whole family is pretty much in law, and that was the thing I always thought I would do. And I actually didn't get into law, which I'm now very thankful for. Didn't get into law, just as the Lord had it be, kind of like that door was closed for me. And I had absolutely no idea what I was going to study. I was kind of like gobsmacked. I was like, okay, well, what do I do now? And so I knew I loved people. I knew I loved talking, and I knew, and so I ended up signing up for communication management. Still not really knowing what I want to do. Did communication management for a little while, and realized I really enjoyed the marketing, like the strategy, understanding people behavior side of things, or subjects that I had. And I loved them. And then I decided to switch over to marketing management. So, like you say, it wasn't something that was really kind of something that I knew about, very much before actually going to uni. So it was really while I was at university that I actually switched into marketing.
Okay. Yeah, it's so crazy how the Lord works. I had a similar story, but I realized, just watching your journey, because I've been following you for a while. So, I've seen you just really perform in that degree as well and be, a top performer, top of your class, like just, constantly owning it. And I think yeah, how was that journey for you? Just now realizing that, okay, this is something I enjoy, but then, actually upon almost completing your degree, realizing, okay, this is something I'm really good at. Like, I think my question is, this now will be a faith question because God guided a lot of it. How did you actually then
Mm.
know in that moment, cool, I'm going to stick with the marketing and this is actually what I think I'm meant to do for my life?
Sure. I think that's a difficult one because you kind of, I wouldn't say there was ever a point while I was studying where I was like, yes, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But what I did know is that I worked really hard. I gave my all. Like, I must say in school, I wasn't really, I was so focused on academics. It was important to me, but it wasn't like I was always, trying to be the top achiever or whatever. But as soon as I started doing something that I really did enjoy and I really wanted to learn more about how do you understand customer behavior, consumer behavior, how do you derive strategies from that? How do you be analytical and creative at the same time? And that's where it was interesting for me how the Lord knows us so, in so much detail. Where I didn't really even know that I'm necessarily an analytical person and a creative person. The Lord knew this,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, that's why I didn't get into law and didn't do law because I just started enjoying it so much, understanding those both sides of myself. And that's why I performed well because I worked hard, but at the same time within myself, there was this ability to be creative, but to also really think strategically, do the whole analytical side of things. So, yeah, I would say it was over the years, it was really just, I've always been someone who just strives to do my best. And over the years, I also had to learn what it looks like to not always just focus on striving because striving also creates exhaustion. And so I really had to learn to also trust the Lord with my dreams and my goals. Um, so I'd say it was really you know, my studies was a time where I also said yes to a lot of things. I worked for Adidas as a kind of a brand coach where I just said yes and I was petrified, but I did sales for Adidas. So, but I then tried out some different areas in marketing, more the sales side of it, which I did for a while. And then I started working in market research while I was actually still studying. So, then that's how that kind of evolved. But really just trusting the Lord with all the steps of it. Yeah.
Yes, yes. But I really like that you touched on how, when you really enjoy something as well, that working hard also just comes naturally because you're so engaged in what you're doing. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, for me, I mean, I have so many friends and also just see so many young people that start studying and they don't enjoy it. And, maybe they're trying to see it through for their parents, or maybe they just still don't know what they want to do. And there's a lot of confusion in the career space. And that's also why I actually want to, kind of shed a light on really what your journey was during your studies and how you did end up where you are. And it's cool that you said you worked really hard, you said yes to a lot of things, but again, you didn't even initially apply for marketing. You actually started with the communications, but to even get there you had to have some sort of know-how that you liked people, that you liked certain things. So yeah, I think a good place for people to start is to at least know what they enjoy and go from there, and also trust the Lord, because yeah, we know that's a big part of who we are. So the next thing I wanted to ask was, now you've graduated and you start working, how was industry different
Yeah.
to your studying experience and what they taught you?
So I think, I mean, when studying, I think in a lot of fields, especially for me, my experience in marketing, it's very much theory based when you're studying. It's just like textbook knowledge, and you kind of know what you know. But then when you get into industry, it's really very very practical. You're kind of thrown in the deep end. Here's your clients. Here's your project. Go for it. And I think that was the thing that caught me off guard a little bit, was that really sink or swim, practical side of it. And I think definitely something that did help me was, as I mentioned, working while studying. I would advocate for that 100%. Doing the sales and, learning to work with targets or deliverables before you really step in the workplace. That is so important, because if you just have the textbook side of things and you step into the workplace, man, it's a whole different playing field.
No, I think it's awesome that you've actually added that. I know it can be a little bit tricky for some people to actually try work while they're studying, but like you said, like if there are opportunities
Yeah.
out there that can accommodate that, then go for it. I know for me, like with my master's coming up, I actually chose that program because work experience was incorporated into the whole program. So I think it's so awesome that
Yeah.
you've actually mentioned that because yeah, the practical side does definitely introduce you to what it's really, really about. So yeah, Monique,
Yeah.
you have been like I've mentioned, a very high performing like student and a really hard worker in your degree. And I want to talk on work life balance. Because yeah, we have a huge burnout culture at the moment. People really overworking
Yeah.
themselves, really just trying to achieve big dreams, big goals. And so how have you navigated really just again, you're married, so managing, being married and just being involved
Yeah.
in church and all of it, how have you managed it?
Look, I'm not gonna lie to you. It's been a journey. It's definitely not something that I would say we're just born with and we just know how to do, And especially in these times, it's like it's like when you step into a job and they kind of say to you, "Well, where's all your years of experience?" You have to already. There's so much pressure to perform, from the get go. So, and for me, it really has been a journey of learning to say yes. And I think this really taught me my limits where I threw myself in fully. From when I studied, as I said, I worked, I was involved in the church. I was dating my now husband at that time, so already had the relationship thing going, and have a big family, so always had family and things going. So for me, it really at the start it was very very difficult. I had very late nights because I always wanted to kind of be the best or I don't know prove myself in a way, and I know a lot of us struggle with that. But over the years, I think I started to realize what my limits are, and I started to put things in place. So boundaries. I mean, I'm actually busy reading a book called Boundaries. I don't know if you've heard of it. Really just talking about how to gain your freedom and kind of how to say no. And I mean that's something definitely that I'm still learning. But one of my colleagues actually at my first jobs I ever had said something really cool, and he said it's not about gaining work-life balance because if you think about balance, right, it's very difficult. If you think of a scale, it's very, very difficult to get exact balance. You'll always have one that's slightly off. If you think of work and you think of the rest of your life and all
Yeah.
the other things tugging at you, it's almost impossible to get that balance. And so he really spoke about an integrated life. So,
Yeah.
and that's really been something I've been thinking about a lot. It's like bringing in your date nights. You talk about marriage. Every Thursday we have date nights. Doesn't matter what happens on a Thursday we have date nights, and focusing on the fact that you need to exercise every day. So for us, my husband's also in consulting, so for us it looks like 5 o'clock in the morning every day. We don't always get it right, but putting it in place to, you know, to just to just have your non-negotiables, have them in place because especially in consulting that I work in, it's very unpredictable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, for me, it's really just, it's not about work-life balance. It's about integration. So for us, we have cell groups every Tuesday and we know that this is coming the next week or, so like I say, have your non-negotiables, work from that foundation.
It's great advice. I mean, I've even had to implement some of that stuff into my own life. Because again, like there are those non-negotiables, taking care of your health, making sure that you are exercising. I'm not married, but like, making time for, your partner and the person that you are in a relationship with,
Yeah,
because you want to be intentional. All those things if again, I always say like if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So if you're not going to put something in place, like
that's right.
expect
Yeah,
you're going to hit those road bumps eventually. So I think that's great
yeah,
advice and also really does hit the nail on the head of my question. So it's not really about work-life balance, but more how you're going to integrate those non-negotiables into your life and working around that. So that's super cool. So on the topic of your husband, actually, so like you said, you guys are from South Africa and you've had to move to Dubai. And I think that was actually because
yeah.
Damon got a job in Dubai. So yeah,
Yes,
how have
yeah.
you navigated that in a marriage, like navigating your careers, and still trying to support each other in your careers and handling a move like that.
Yeah. Sure, it has not been easy. Let me say that. Look, I think for me, the most beautiful thing of a marriage is the covenant, the covenantal relationship. And it's actually funny when my husband heard that he's got this opportunity to come to Dubai. I was so romantic. He phoned me and I was like, where you go, I'll go, and so romantic. And I got home and
Aww.
there's absolutely no way I'm doing this. And then I was like, there's no way I'm doing this. Just forget what I said, I'm not going, you know? So that was just like the humanness about it coming out. And so we journeyed about it and we journeyed on it. And it was actually so incredible because we got word from the Lord about it. We got Joshua 1:9 was just, people kept telling us, this is word for you, this is word for you, people that don't know each other. And we just kept getting word, Joshua 1:9, be courageous, I will go with you wherever you go. And
Yes.
man, I can't tell you how
Yeah.
that's been so true for us. So yeah, we packed up our lives, and for me as a wife, I really learned a lot of. I would say I learned about what it is to be a godly wife, and how God just put on my heart to say, look, you love your husband with everything in your being. And for me, I left my career. I was kind of like, I'm gonna support my husband on this. I'm gonna give him the shot that he needs, to advance his career. And for me, career is important. It is important, but
Yeah.
for me, my first priority is my home, my husband, and God has just blessed me with career. On top of that, I didn't even come here for work. And to be honest, in my second job here already, and it's like God just provides when your heart posture is in the right place.
That's amazing. It's true. God does look at the heart. It is scripture as well. But I think it's really awesome. I mean, thank you for being honest as well, to say in the beginning, like, you can be super romantic and say, oh, where you go, I'll go. But then it is quite a
Yeah.
big change to make and quite a big move. And you do need to actually sit and be realistic with it, because it's your life. Like, moving to a new
Yeah.
country is not something small. I mean, I'm kind of in the process of it myself, and it's quite an undertaking. So it's not
Oh
something you
wow.
just wake up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't just wake up and decide, I'm just going to leave the country and that'll be smooth sailing. And so, yeah, I think now we've touched quite a bit on our faith, and Dubai isn't really predominantly Christian. And, again, like, we know many times it's a device to, like, kind of like leave your faith out of the workplace and stuff like that. But it is a completely different environment to be working in. And I wanted to ask you, what has that been like, now having a job in a completely different country, but also from a faith perspective? Have you had
Mm.
challenges with that, and how have you navigated it?
That's a very cool question. So I think for us, it was actually very interesting to realize that when you're in South Africa and you think about Dubai, you're very narrow-minded. You kind of think, okay, there's only one way of doing things, and that's how it's going to be. And to be honest, when we got here, it was really such a great surprise for us, where it's such a diverse place to live. There's
Yeah.
so many different cultures, so many different religions, and you actually are allowed to live out your faith to a certain extent. But so we pretty much ran to the church here. A church here. I mean, we found a church community. We've been staying here for about 8 months, and we've been in the church for about 6-7 months. And for us, that changed everything. We set up our foundation of our cell group. The people that we know will support us here. So early on, and for anyone moving overseas, I would say do that. Run to the church, get your community with you. And so, yeah, I think that gave us a great foundation in terms of kind of in the workplace. I've had really interesting encounters where I wouldn't say it was really a kind of a persecution of my faith or anything like that, but certainly there were things done in the workplace that I didn't agree with. Things for me, believing what I believe and believing in the Bible, it's like it's either right or it's wrong. No, you don't move from, it's either you understand that or not. And it was actually incredible for me while I was still working in a previous capacity. There were some things going on, but I wasn't aware of it. And the Lord actually brought me scripture. He brought me Deuteronomy 32:10, and it really focuses on kind of sometimes God takes you out. He ruffles the nest, and like an eagle, he takes you out of the nest, gives you clear vision, so that he can set you up somewhere else. And so I got that scripture, and not long after that, I realized the things I don't agree with, and gave me such confidence to stand up for what I believe in, obviously in a professional sense
Yes.
and in the right way to do it.
Yeah.
But because of the fact, and I believe this, because of the fact that I was obedient to God's word, 2 weeks later, I got another opportunity at another company that I'm very, very excited about, and I'll be joining soon. So yeah, I think my story is really just stick to what you believe in. Don't ever in the workplace be swayed to do things that you don't agree with. You can trust God to provide for your next
Oh,
opportunity, or
wow.
provide, with the courage or whatever it is to be able to stand up for what you believe in the workplace. Don't ever undermine that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, don't live a life of compromise. That's the last thing you want to do as a Christian is
Yep.
live a life of compromise.
100%.
And it's always easier said than done, but it's so awesome that like you had faith in God that even if it was going to cost you your job, God would still provide. And I mean, he provided. So, I mean, that
Yeah.
I really hope is a word to people that, might be so fearful about what the future will hold if they speak out, if they do something. Obviously, do, like you said, do it in a professional way. But yeah, to
Yes.
never think that God will not be able to still take care of you while you actually stay true to those values. So I'm going to now ask the
Yeah.
questions that we ask everyone on the podcast, and I think it will really unpack the conversation really nicely. So the first question I always ask is, what is one piece of advice you would have given yourself, before you got into marketing and before you got onto this journey, knowing what you do now?
I think we've touched on it a little bit. But like I said, for me, boundaries is definitely something that I would, if I could go speak to my younger self, just starting out work, um, get yourself some boundaries. I mean, to be honest with you, I really, at the start, I was not great at that. I came to work some days having slept so little hours, working overtime,
Yeah.
sometimes and often, sorry, not being able to attend family functions, not putting family first, and, doing all these things that just so that I can outperform. So, definitely get myself some boundaries. And what I would also say in the same light is embrace the deep side, with the deep end.
Yeah.
I was really thrown in the deep end in my career at the start, and it sort of overwhelmed me, but I learned so many things that, now formed my skill set and the stuff that I use now. Um, and I think just one more thing is just to, if I could tell myself something, is just to really have faith, to stress less, and honestly just
Yeah.
trust in the Lord. Because if I look back now, at the different careers, paths I've had, or the different companies I've worked at, even moving to Dubai, or doing my masters, that's nothing like I would have ever imagined could have happened. And I think I would just have a lot more peace of mind back then, knowing what I know now.
Yeah, I mean, it never gets old, that question. I love hearing everyone's, advice to the younger
Yeah.
self, and it always like, yeah, I mean, it applies to me as well. So, that's really awesome. And the second question then was, what was, one of your biggest fears or some of those biggest challenges you had, and how you overcame them? And it's not to put a focus on fear, because we know we're so much more than the fears that we have, but it's really just to show that, you can overcome, people have overcome, you can do it too. And we are all rooting for each other in that department. So yeah, that's the question.
That's so good. I think for me, being quite a short lady, I think, being tiny. I always, when I came into the workplace, I was the youngest person there. I was the shortest lady there. I was
No.
the least experienced. I kind of just felt diminished. With the moment I walked in, I felt like, oh my goodness, I feel like a tiny little ant in this massive corporate world. And so I think the largest fear I had was just not being good enough, not being seen, not being able to, in a professional sense, stand up, in an exco meeting and tell people who have way more experience, tell them what to do, tell them what their strategy is. It was absolutely daunting at the start. But I'd say for me, the thing that really helped me overcome it, was saying yes to a lot of things. So from the get go, and this is where boundaries is also very important, but there's also the side of saying yes and allowing yourself to really jump in fully. And So I did, from the start of my career, I did conferences, I spoke at conferences. I was so scared, but doing that gave me such a kind of a nudge, like, yes, you can do this. And, you know, um, doing my studies while working, taking on more projects, taking on larger projects. So for me, it was really saying yes and allowing myself to really see what my limits are. Sometimes it was good to see, okay, this is my limit and this is where my boundary, starts. But I think if you don't allow yourself to fail as well, sometimes I did
Yeah.
fail, and that's where I learned. And so I want to just say, allow yourself to fail and say yes, and that really gives you kind of the cap that you need later on to say, okay, I've overcome my fear, in that sense.
That's awesome, really. So yeah, you touched a bit on putting yourself out there and saying yes to things. I mean, did you work in companies that gave you those sorts of opportunities? Did you actually intentionally go out seeking them? What was that whole process like? Because I mean, as women in business as well, I mean, like you said, like to really just cement yourself and have your place and put your hand up and really get more involved. Is that something your company facilitated, or did you really have to actually push yourself out there and find those opportunities? So how was that whole journey?
I think, while I was studying already, that I would say there it was kind of more my own doing to go look for opportunities to work while studying.
Yeah.
But I'm so thankful for the first company that I worked at. Honestly, it was such an incredible place to work, and it's very important to find a company that, like you say, will give you those opportunities. From the moment I started working there, I was actually employed in a kind of a higher position than what my experience allowed, and so I was really thrown in the deep end. But at the same time, they always said, "We'll give you exposure, but we'll never expose you." And I love that because they gave me opportunities to take on clients that you know um, it was difficult, but I always had someone supporting me. I always had someone backing me, teaching me, mentoring me. I had a really great mentor. So but there was always a sense of me having to step up to the plate as well. So it's always a little bit twofold. But in my sense, I really had a great opportunity and a great company that gave me opportunities to do conferences, like I mentioned, and to take on more and more projects on my own, to give me autonomy. And I think it's so great when you get that autonomy, you build that trust in yourself as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm very thankful for my first company that I worked at.
Yeah, and obviously that now is a springboard to obviously have more confidence, then to also put yourself out into more things like in the companies to come.
Yeah.
But I think that's important for young people to hear as well. Don't just because it can be very easy, especially with the state of the job market, to just want to take the
Yeah.
first opportunity that comes to you. And it can be so difficult to turn down those kinds of opportunities when like maybe you need the finances or you really need a job, but to just also let the Lord lead and guide you. And also it's not so much about, oh, I need to work for this company. It's also, do you want to work for this company? Ask them, do they even offer those
Yes,
kinds of
that's right.
opportunities? What will your experience in the company look like? And I think a lot of young people need to ask those questions before, they go into jobs and then realize halfway down the line there's no career progression or help or mentorship. And mentorship, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I mean, that's a big thing for me as well, advocating for creating more spaces of
Yeah.
mentorship and letting people, be able to find mentors. So yeah, thank you so much for that answer. And so I wanted to ask next. It doesn't seem like it has a place, but I still wanted to ask it, is that what achievement are you most proud of?
I'm so grateful for the Lord for so many opportunities I've had, but I must say one that I really feel was tough, and I'm proud that I completed it was my master's that I completed last year, and obtaining top student in that. And for me, the reason for that specific one is we were in a time I was still working in a consultancy, so still had very tough hours, and at the same time, obviously being married and trying to navigate all that. And at the same time, preparing to move to Dubai. So it was really a lot going on. And I actually stayed in Cape Town at the time, and I was studying at Tux. So every month I flew back and forth, between Cape Town and Tux. So
Wow.
kind of managing all these things, pushing towards the top student from the start. I was like, Lord, this is something I really want to do, and just had this goal. And I just really felt God's grace over that. And just there was a lot of times it was very difficult. It wasn't easy, but it gave me just it taught me also how to manage those boundaries that we've been talking about. It's important to have me time. It's important to still exercise. It's important to eat right, and all these things
Yeah,
contribute to your success at the end of the day. So yeah,
that's
I'd say
good.
that's the one I'm most proud of because it really pulled together everything that I'd say that I've learned my whole life.
Yeah, oh, that is awesome. And it's really important how those topics keep coming up again. It's like eat well, take care of yourself, because that it's not just working hard. Like you do need to take care of the vessel that needs to work
Yeah.
hard as well. And you established, oh, I'm assuming now that you established that quite early on. I mean, I've known you for quite some time. We did go to school together, so you were always quite an active person in high school as well. So was it something like early on in your marriage now? Because it's very easy to put in place a routine for yourself when you are just managing yourself. But when you got married, how, early on were you able to put in that routine for each other and work around your stuff?
That's a cool question. I mean, it is that you have your own kind of thing going, and then there's two of you, and then you kind of need to figure out how to do it together. So, for us, I mean, we've known each other for quite some time, so I think that also does help. I've known him since grade two, so really had quite a good feel for each other's kind of strengths and weaknesses, and what we love to do. And for us, we love to run 21Ks, 10Ks together. So we used to go out on weekends and go run together. So that was something that we loved to do together. So I'd say if we talk in a marriage sense, find that thing that you enjoy together in terms of exercise. So not just a routine thing.
Yeah.
Find the thing that you have fun doing together, whether it's playing golf, whether it's running together, whatever it is, because that's something that keeps you fit, but also kind of you bring in the fun element,
Yeah.
you get out there. And then in terms of exercise, look, we've had many different seasons. Some seasons where there's been very little exercise, and some seasons where we've been great at it. And I think the time we were best at it is my husband actually read that 5 a.m. club book. I'm not
Ah,
sure if you
yes,
must
I've
know
heard
about
of
it
it.
or
I
not, but
really want to read it.
it's so good, so good. And that really just gave us such a practical way to, we exercise at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I absolutely hated that idea at the start. Asked my husband, I was very grumpy. But I think it's cool if, as a couple, you kind of figure out something that could work for both of you, and you pull ideas. Sometimes it's not
Yes.
going to work, sometimes it does, but just throwing things on the table to say like, hey, let's try this. Okay, that doesn't work. Let's try this. And for us, 5 a.m. club really works. Get your exercise done in the mornings, and get your quiet time going, do your work day, and then you have the rest of your afternoon for other things. So yeah, that really works well for us.
Awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to actually put
Yeah,
back, I know it's not about marriage, but again, like I think the fact being, I think it's a very different conversation when you speak to someone in a career that's single and also when you speak to someone in a career that's married. So that's why I actually wanted to
yeah,
touch on that because I think there are a lot of things that single people can still take from your whole experience. But I think also it's important to also touch on being married, going through all those experiences because you are not one person, you are not your own. So
yeah,
yeah, what I
yeah.
really wanted to ask next was, so you are in the field of consulting, you said your husband is in the field of consulting, and I think to just bring it back again before we almost end off with the episode is, so consulting is also a very like broad topic. It can entail a lot of things. Just yeah, and you said it can also be like a bit of an unpredictable sort of, field as well. So can you touch a little bit more on what working as a consultant has been like and pretty much what to expect in the life of consulting? The highs, the lows, it all.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So like you rightly said, it does differ in different industries. But consulting at its core has to do with clients and deliverables, and that the thing with that is they always want it done yesterday. So I think it's really understanding that when you meet a certain client or a deadline, what's always helped me is you have your timelines to be very much with it in terms of when you have your certain milestones, and to stick with that. And I think the difficult thing about that, for me particularly in market research, it's you'll get a client, so you consult with clients, you understand from the get go, what is their kind of strategy that they're looking to achieve, what is the thing that they want to study, We understand what customers say, and there's a whole timeline to understanding what customers' feedback is, analyzing the data, working the data, getting to strategies, and getting back to clients. And oftentimes, clients want that answer very quickly, but there's a whole process to it. And I know it's like that in, with many different industries and consulting. Like I say, the client wants the answer yesterday already, but you have a certain timeline to follow. And often you have more than one client. So you have many clients tugging at you for answers that you have a process that you need to work through. And so I think that's something that I really had to learn over the years, that there is value for the clients in sticking up or standing up for sustainable working and actual processes, because there's a professionalism to it.
Yes.
It's important to stick to certain processes and to work, see the timeline through, because that's in the client's benefit at the end of the day, in terms of data accuracy or whatever it is that you're working with, to be able to stand up for yourself in a professional sense and manage expectations. That's also very important. Under promise, over deliver. That's also something I had to learn in my career.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that definitely kind of touches on the reality of the career a bit more, because like you said, I mean, there's so much you can go into just simply from studying marketing management. But we are speaking to your personal experience, and yeah, I think that advice is also super, super powerful. And I also wanted to ask, with your master's, actually, so I know like a lot of people have different motives for doing a master's. Sometimes it's also a very big financial undertaking. Sometimes your company pays for it. So how did you go about like doing your master's? How did you know you wanted to do your master's, and how was that journey for you, doing it while working? I'm assuming you did it while working.
Yeah, yeah. So I was still working at a market research consultancy. So yeah, it was a very busy time. But I must say, for me personally, when I am busy with one thing, it's almost like I get fueled to do more. It's like when I do very little, I don't have energy to do much. I don't know. That's just how I work. So when I take on more things, it's kind of like I'm fueled to do more, And I did my master's because I've always had an interest in linking what I do back to the academic field. And that really comes to your question earlier on, is like, why don't we know a lot about this kind of field of marketing or this industry of work? And I really believe that there's not a big enough emphasis on drawing proper insights from customer feedback and customer experience. That's the main kind of field I work in, is customer experience, understanding what customers' pain points are and using that and actually facilitating your marketing strategies from that. So for me, it's always been very important to base strategies on sound scientific backing. And so, yes, that's why I wanted to go and do my master's, and maybe hopefully one day go back and go into maybe lecturing or the academic field in some sense, to kind of tie the two together.
Okay, well, that is awesome, and it's true. I think the heart of a master's is research and being able to contribute to research in the field. So, I mean, again, well done for obviously being top of your class with the masters, and yeah, for
Thank you.
also being so passionate about the field that you're in. And yeah, I guess to end it off with what has been such a lovely episode. Really, I've learned a lot from everything you've just said. Is what word of encouragement would you give to people, especially young people in careers that are navigating, maybe now moving with their husband, navigating studying, navigating anything that's probably similar to what you went through? What word of encouragement would you give?
Well, I think there's so many things I'd like to say, but I think the biggest thing that I've learned is, don't underestimate your ability to adapt to change, and to be able to actually learn and grow, and don't ever be afraid of failing. I know that sounds like a bumper sticker, but it really is. Don't be afraid of failing. Don't be afraid of applying for that job that you think is way out of your reach. And actually, just back yourself. I think that's something that I've really learned, is back yourself. Sometimes maybe fake it till you make it, but back yourself, because people honestly want to see that. People are inspired by people who are inspired.
Yeah.
Like you have to come in and carry yourself right, and be confident. Be confident in your ability to take on something new. We are a lot more resilient than what we think we are as humans. And I think in the last 2 years doing my master's and moving overseas and all of that has really just taught me we really are much more capable than what we think. So yeah, that would be my 2 cents.
Well, that's awesome, and thank you so much for that, Monique, and thank you for being on the podcast. Honestly, I know it's been a very busy time. Like, again, you're starting a new job very soon, and I do wish you all the best in that as well. I know you're going to shine in that area as
Thank
well.
you.
But thank you so much for being on the podcast. I learned so much. I hope the people that listen learn a lot. And yeah, I think everyone can pretty much reach out to you personally if they still have more questions. I know I'll put like a little
Yeah,
poll of
more than
questions.
welcome.
Yes, in the videos, and also just drop your socials and stuff. And yeah, thank you for just sharing yourself today. I really, really appreciate it. And that is the end of the episode.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. It was just so much fun chatting with you.